Ahmed?
Yeah, so the working group also, we can, however you want to do that. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how about this? I see that we don't have that many people in the space, so I would love to get to know who's in the space. I'll introduce yourself. So my name, with your name, your pronoun, and um, we don't, who's your favorite? What was your favorite moment of Pride Month? I guess that would be a lit thing. I'll start first. My name's Chella. I go by she and they. I've been a part of the Stop Lickety Spying Coalition on and off since 2013. And yeah, my favorite part was when my band took over Hollywood. Anyone can go next.
Hi, it's Susan, and I'm pronouns are her, she, and I usually don't do that because sex means nothing to me anymore at 71. But nonetheless, if I must proclaim, and I'm sorry I don't have a favorite moment to share with you right now, but I'll keep that in mind for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Good to hear your voice.
Always good to be with you, Cello.
Who wants to go next?
I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt. I use he, him pronouns. My favorite moment of Pride Month was just listening to, I think, some disco songs in my iPod and just kind of transporting myself to another world. So hopefully that can happen anytime too, but thanks for being here.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Melendez. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Moment of Pride Month that stood out to me. My family and my sisters are they're not that much younger, but I feel like we're more of we're able to have these conversations with our parents a little bit more. And so we were able to have a very good conversation with my mom just about gender identity and sexuality, which isn't the norm usually. And so I feel like we hit a milestone with our parents. So that was a good step for us, and just just trying to be that bridge for our family. So I really want to shout out my youngest sister who's 17 for that part. But yeah, thank you.
I suppose I can go. Kind of quiet. I'm Steve. He, him. To the point of the favorite moment of this past Pride episode, I think getting word on New York City's effort to minimize the policing influence, very specific, keep cops away. Don't really know how it worked out, but to resurrect, some of the original stuff from Stonewall, it was actually an anti-policing event. So I think it's good to bring that back. In any event, that was one of the high points for me. Thank you.
I can go next. Hey, everybody, Hamid, he, him. Yeah, and my favorite Pride month moment was when Chella and her band took over that intersection in Hollywood, and then the pigs were trying to intervene, and then basically people just told them to go fuck off. And they, at least for the time that I was there, at least for a couple of hours, they kind of stayed away. So a lot of power, and people just kind of facing off and not letting them come close. So, yeah. Fernando, Raya, Farzana, but if folks don't feel up to introducing, I guess, Chella, that should be all right, huh?
Yeah, but we'll just give it a few more seconds for folks to
Sure.
answer.
Sure.
Going once, going twice. So, okay. So, welcome to the meeting. This is more of an internalized conversation, which just let folks know about what's going on with this. Is that during COVID, starting last year, we started doing webinars every month for gender and sexuality. And just being honest, it was primarily on myself and another person who's a mother, who's an organizer, doing other things with other groups as well. They're a badass. They've been part of the coalition since its inception, actually. And they've been kind of like we both had a conversation around capacity, right? And so we decided to do 1 month that would be more of internal dialogue, which also is another conversation. And then the other month would be more of an actual webinar where we invite folks to talk about the topic, whatever comes up. We have talked about everything from international struggles. So we've been teaming up with trans organization in Colombia, to talking to trans folks in Saudi Arabia, to talking with folks, to talk about youth in the situation, the laws that are coming up in like Alabama and Arkansas against gender affirming care for trans youth, right? So we've covered a bunch of topics. We've also included intersex in that struggle, because a lot of folks leave out intersex in their lingo, and folks don't know what intersex means. It's folks who are born with pretty much the medical industrial complex likes to force them in the box of either saying that they have both, X and Y chromosome, which we all have that, right? But I like to let other folks lead that conversation because I'm not intersex. But yeah, if folks want some information on that, I can totally send out to some folks who are doing that work. But yeah, this month, just to let y'all know, Mariela, who works with Familia, which they do a lot of around trans and queer liberation, especially deportation and like support for trans and queer undocumented folks. They just got a grant to work with you, right? And so we were going to talk about that, but right as I was taking care of my housing issue, because I do live in Skid Row, I got the call from Baba. So I had to call Mariela, and Mariela is sick and not able. So this is very much a free flow conversation. I would like to throw it out to y'all. What would y'all like to talk about? Like, what are some topics y'all would like to address within the realm of gender and sexuality? And I do want to put out that for folks that gender and sexuality are two different things. Just because we're talking about gender doesn't mean we have to talk about sexuality, right? They are two different things. They sometimes overlap, but they are two different things. Does anybody have any questions about what I said, or want to answer the question of like what they would love to hear in this space today, or later in further things? I'm not taking notes, but I'm sure we're recording this.
Chella, that's very interesting what you just said to me, because I did make a comment about that because of my age, and I like sex means nothing to me anymore. Truly, actually, that is a fact. But the difference between gender and sexuality, now, just because I'm old doesn't mean I don't care about people being discriminated because of their choices, and especially about that's not a choice. That's just the way you are. Just like I can't stop being black. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
thank you for that clarification, and if you can expound on that, I would love to hear it, because that would be informative to me.
We could just go to the good old Wikipedia of what gender is. Gender is pretty much you are born. The doctor looks at you and says, "Oh my gosh," looks at you and says you're a boy or you're a girl. That's gender, right? It's how you define with when it comes to your body type. Your sexuality is who you go to bed with, right? Um, and that can mean different types of people too. Like I know there are people that are transgender women that like women. I know transgender men that like men. I know transgender people that like any gender because there's more than two genders. I think that gender is also like we are so based in America with like a Western nice thinking of what gender looks like, right? And I don't want to exotify cultures when I'm like, there are other cultures that like have more, but like there are, right? There are like cultures that have more than two genders. That are indigenous pre-colonization. There are cultures that have like more than one or two ways of being pre-colonization. And so I think in terms of when we talk about gender and sexuality, like I said, how I say for me, I am a trans woman, right? At one time, I did identify as a man, right? But that was because that was the only thing I knew, right? And then so when like I started hearing about other genders and other ways of being, I started doing what's called gender affirming care to become the woman I believe that I am. And Susan, I actually know you. I think you have a big heart. You're a very sweet woman. So like this was no shade, no thing to you. I was just letting y'all know, just in case other folks don't know, because we don't. Like I didn't know this 12 years ago. You know what I mean? And so yeah, did I make that clear to anyone? Anyone?
Thank you, Chella.
You are so welcome.
Sheila,
Yeah,
can you expand on there's just a side note here. Can you expand a little bit on when people say that it's by choice or this is how people are? I mean,
True. Thank you for acknowledging that language too, right? So I think that folks, I think the language of that of how people choose to identify is kind of a dangerous slope, right? I don't think there's any harm in that, like any malicious way of saying that right now, but like I do think we have to realize that for some folks, this is a life or death situation, right? Um, a lot of the times, people are grown up and they don't feel that they are the gender that they are given, right? Like I said, a doctor looks at someone and says they're a boy or a girl, right? But growing up, the person may not feel that they're a boy or a girl. They are like, yo, the doctor named me a boy, but I'm a girl, or the doctor named me a girl, but I'm a boy, or the doctor named me this, and I don't want to be any of those things. And although we feel like it might be a choice, especially in Americanized culture, I do feel like for a lot of folks it's not, because it's either being who they are or committing suicide. Like trans and queer folks are some of the highest population of people that are committing suicide. They are the highest people who are being like victimized and all this different things. And like if we could choose this, we wouldn't. If we could choose being queer, a lot of us wouldn't. Like just being real. Just because it does, especially if you're a person with an already oppressed identity, it adds to the layer of oppressions that you are going to be faced with, right? So for me, as a Black person, it's not like I woke up one morning and be like, "Oh, I'm just going to choose to be a woman," because it's knowing, like I was raised by a woman, right? Like so I was raised by a woman that had to do a lot of shit to to take care of me and my brother and my sister and my two siblings, right? Like, I knew that it was going to be harder to be a woman and let alone be a trans woman. But I still, as someone who, like, if it wasn't for, me feeling this way, I, I hope I'm making that as a thing. I don't think it's a choice though. Definitely not a choice. Some folks in this, I'm gonna be real, some folks do feel like it's a choice, even within the realm. But most of us, most of the discourse, most of the conversation is that it is not a choice, especially when it comes to our safety, especially when it comes to our survival and our mental health, because it's either this or we're gonna die. It's either this or we're not gonna like be happy in our lives. Um, you know, it's not as like going to a store and saying Doritos or Cheetos or vegan or gluten free or non gluten free. It's literally like I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna die for some folks. Did I clarify that enough for you, Hamid?
Yes, please. Thank you, Shala.
Yes, please. Any other questions? I don't want to be the only one talking, y'all. I am not a teacher, as you can hear. I wasn't prepared. What do other folks want to hear in this conversation?
Well, maybe just open it up, for folks to have a free flow, as you were saying, and maybe if I can just, so maybe Jessica, you've been a youth organizer, and how were the struggles and challenges that the youth were dealing with? I mean, your experiences of organizing youth, and particularly youth of color.
Yeah, for us, I think we, as organizers too, like, we're also trying to have a better understanding of how to approach like these conversations among our youth, because a lot of our youth were identifying as queer and had a lot of questions. And then I think one of the last years that I was like still organizing, I had a student who identified as male and was hoping to do the transition from female to male. And so we ended up having to do, we were already trying to politicize youth and have like different workshops around like gender and sexuality. So if we couldn't do them ourselves, we would invite folks from Bienestar to come and like have those conversations with students, and like continue to have those conversations with students, just because we didn't want to have like a lot of homophobia among the group. We wanted it to be a safe space and a brave space for folks to come in and like be themselves and their true selves. So we did a lot of work with Bienestar, and we did some work with, I'm forgetting the group's name. I forget the group's name, but we did work with them, and it became something that it was a challenge. I feel like it's an ongoing journey, especially like as young people growing up in these communities. Sometimes we're taught like these phobias of fearing the other, of things that we don't know. And so for some of our male students in particular, it was hard for them to understand like the like just what it meant to be transgender, what it meant to have be fluid in gender. So those were kind of conversations that we would have that would be a lot more difficult, but for us it was important to just have those conversations and just struggle it out. We used to say unity, struggle, unity, because at the end of the day we were together in conversation and in dialogue with one another, and we wanted to uplift everyone's like struggles and stories. And at the end, there might be some difficult conversations that we would have, or some difficulties or tensions among the groups that we had to diffuse. But at the end, we wanted to come out of it, a lot more unified. So I think we made strides to, be more inclusive, most definitely. But I think we could have still done a lot more work to make sure that some of our students had answers, or that they felt safe enough or brave enough to be in those spaces. I think one of the last conversations that we had as well was just, if this is a space where we're to be our true selves, why are the bathrooms not inclusive towards, transgender youth? Why don't we have more conversations about being trans or what that means? And so we ended up having we would send some of our students to the Brother Son Selves Coalition group, and they would come back and kind of come back and also like lead and teach some of these things, or some of the things that they would learn in these workshops. So they were kind of like leads or ambassadors for their group. And the important for us, it was just important to build that leadership among them and like have them feel comfortable and empowered enough to share their story, so that they can also you know, for the folks that weren't comfortable or were shy or were nervous about coming out or even sharing their story, for them to kind of capture their attention and also empower them. So it was a lot of trial and error, most definitely. And I feel like it was a long journey of learning, and it still continues. But I'm very thankful for being in those spaces, and from learning a lot from not just the organizers, but the students themselves. I think there were very like key moments where we felt really proud that the students were speaking up and sharing their stories, because it's not easy, like Chela mentioned, like it's not easy. And to say that it's a simple choice does not go deep enough into the complexities that come with, you know, being trans or being queer. One of our students who was transitioning and is now transitioning, after he turned 18, he decided to go on T. But he had a really hard time because his family was Christian, and so they would send him to Christian conversion camps, and to the point where he had to run away, and the organization had to try to diffuse the situation with the parents, and have a conversation and a dialogue with the parents about like, you need to have like, it just needs to be a more, yes, thank you, Chela, for putting that in the chat. It needs to be a safer space for your child to be there, because right now, like your child doesn't feel safe, right? And so I think like that's what I would want to learn more about, is just how to ensure that like parents understand that this isn't, it's nothing to demonize their children over. I know traditions and customs and religion often look down upon just differences in gender and sexuality. And so I think for me, it's about how do we ensure that like with parents or with older folks, or yeah, we're just also sharing this perspective and not necessarily forcing it upon them, because I feel like oftentimes they feel like it's being forced upon them. But how do we invite them into this conversation, and invite them to hold a different perspective, so that we're creating a much safer and more tolerant community at the end of the day. But that's just been a little bit of my experience.
I want to tell folks about being a star. Being a star is a trans and queer. They do HIV prevention and awareness for trans and queer, primarily Latinos, Latinx folks. But their services range from to any POC or anybody. I used to go when I was younger. And they have an office, or they have an office in like Hollywoodish area, and they used to have one in Boyle Heights or East Los. It's super. They're super dope around like some of the services they do offer. Especially like the one that I used to go to with a lot of trans Latinas, and that's where I started kind of blossoming, just being honest. So yeah. Oh, and something you touched on, which was really great, around like conversion therapy, which a lot of people don't think that exists. Conversion therapy, it's therapy for folks who feel that they need to not be trans or queer. Literally, they have been outlawed in so many states, especially for youth, because they cause so many irreparable damages, especially mental health damages to like youth, right? But there are a lot that are still happening. Like any Christian can get a fake ass therapy license and set themselves up and be like, I'm a work in conversion therapy, and then they would be like, yeah, they force cis men to be men, quote unquote, and not look at women. I mean, not look at men, and they force cis women to be women and not look at women. Right? It's so gross. I was a part of that for a while. I can go on and on and on about that, but that shit is lit. That shit is it causes a lot of shit. Anyway, oh, and for folks that didn't read what I wrote about testosterone on T, It's what I just said is testosterone. It's one of the medicines that trans men will take in order to be affirmed in their gender. Any other questions or comments? Come on, y'all. We just started. I got some more. I got some sugar in me, some fake sugar. So I got some more energy. Come on.
I have a question. I'm new to the coalition and new to LA as well. And I guess I'm just wondering, and I'm excited to go look back at some of the old webinars from the last year, thinking about policing and a gender and sexuality lens on policing. And I guess that I would love to, I'm sure that's so extensively covered already in previous months' discussions, but especially thinking as well about, the origins of Stonewall and the queer movement in the United States as being so originally linked so closely and inextricable from fights against police brutality and repression and against like capitalist like impoverishment and all these exploitations and things, and thinking about maybe LA in particular, like the Hollywoodization of queer identities over the last few decades and kind of stripping away the political concerns that like started off and violence that necessitated the actions, the like rebellion at Stonewall and around the country. But I sense that there's always been that political spirit in more of the marginalized spaces, even within larger queer communities and like the not the mainstream perhaps, but now, especially in the last year or so, with the resurgence of or the mainstreaming of a certain kind of police, a liberal kind of police concern about the police, as well as mainstream support for queer and trans people, though not always, I don't know, always with problems whenever there's mainstreaming, I guess, of marginal, of mainstream support for marginal communities. And I don't know how to phrase this, but thinking about connecting these things as I think the coalition has been doing, and surely other community activist partners are doing, but just thinking about how to keep the like radical necessity of thinking about police violence and about free gender and sexuality expression together, and how to return to those sort of roots. That's what I'm excited about. And I guess I need to go back to the archives of the webinars, but I don't know if that's a question or anything.
Yeah, it wasn't a question, but that made me think about why we started off in the first place, right? So I want to be completely transparent. And my hashtag is Killer Keeps It Real, so I'm not going to water down anything. We are based, Stoplight PD Spine is based in Skid Row, which has the highest population of policing. And let's be real, there's more African Americans here than any other area in Los Angeles. That being said, the folks that come to LA can, which is the like our base, right? Like if it's not academic folks or folks who've been doing activism and organizing work for a minute, it's folks that live around here. And so there's been a lot of transphobia, there's been a lot of queerphobia and misogyny and misogynoir, right? For folks that don't know what misogynoir is anti-Black misogyny. There you go. It's any type of racist and sexist sexism against Black women, right? And so we like, I'm gonna be real, because like I said, I've been in and out of stop LAPD flying. I had left due to some of that, right? And one of the other coalition members was like, hey, we're gonna start a group to start talking about the issues that we face in the space, right? And during some of our meetings, we realized that it's not just in the space that we need to tackle, but it's also like, in the neighborhood, and it's also within the realm of like the coalition building work that we do with outside of this area, right? So it's how does the macro affect the micro? Like how does the larger picture of transphobia, homophobia, queerphobia, misogyny, misogynoir, how do those things affect folks that are living in Skid Row specifically? How do those things affect what's going on with the police, specifically with LAPD, and how they tackle shit, right? And so we've been meeting, it's been like a very, I'm not an academic by any means, as y'all probably can hear. I'm more of the, like, I live in it. I live in Skid Row, literally. Surprised no fire, no sirens have been going off in the last 30 minutes. But yeah, but like, so like, how do we connect what's been going on with like, with George Floyd, with, shit that's going on with Tony McDade, or shit that happened to India Clark, or to like Cece McDonald, or what do those things, who are those people, and why should we be talking about them? Why are we still remembering Marsha P. Johnson, right? And like, how do those things intersect with like surveillance? How do those things intersect with policing? How do those things intersect with like, the algorithms of crime that we've been talking about with help me out here, Baba, with the algorithm?
Oh, the
Just got rid of it.
predictive policing, Predpol and all.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. So how do those things intersect, right? How does like sex work even, right? Like I'm very positive. I'm a sex work positive person. And so even thinking around that, thinking around like how like literally in 2014, if you were a trans woman in LA and the cop stopped you with a condom, even if you were just gonna go meet a dude just to have sex, even if it wasn't sex work, they would have gotten you for sex work. Like that kind of shit, right? Like, so like thinking about those things and how those things intersect with like the larger work that the coalition has been doing. Because for the longest time, I love when Hamid says this, that like we were mainly focused on race. We were mainly focused on the fact that Black people have been getting murdered. Let's be real, Black and brown people. But then we started realizing, hey, there's some more things to this. There's some trans women that have been coming up missing. There's some sex workers that have been coming up missing. There's some trans women that have gone to the police for help, and they came up missing, or the criminalization of, I liked what the other person said, the other, right? So yeah, I hope that clarifies some of what you said and put some of that into some kind of pretty bow for you. But yeah, that's why we've started, to be real. And I don't mind thinking about the larger things, right? Because I always think about the larger things, I think about like the trans siblings that are like having to fight for their gender affirming care in Alabama and in Arkansas, or even in Saudi Arabia. Like that's why I have my homegirl come and speak to us, or what's going on in Colombia, or what's going on in Brazil, being one of the highest places for victimization for trans women. It's in Brazil, and there's reasons, and if we're talking about liberation for one, we can't talk about, I believe, my firm belief as an activist and an abolitionist is I used to say a double job, but it's more than that. We have a lot of jobs to do around thinking about what real community safety looks like. Because there are people, we have to delegitimize the police, make them so they're not needed. You know what I mean? And because like when community, can't see my air quotes, but community commits violence against other people, they're like, see, y'all need us, you know? And it just validates, for them, it validates their like criminalization of what they're gonna do to Black, specifically Black and brown bodies. I hope I just made sense, y'all. I hope I ain't speaking into a void. If I am, I could be watching TV right now. So talk to me, y'all.
No, Shelly, you're making sense, baby. And
Thank you.
and also, I just want to, add something to that, if I can. That Uncle Joe is doing his American Rescue Plan, and he's planning on putting some money into policing. And I think we need to watch that, because that policing money that he puts in just puffs up their chest, so they come out into and harass, trans people, or, people that they, and Black people and people of color, so we, Hamid, I know, is working on the LAPD, and we got to keep an eye on the money, especially, I know Hamid can add something to this and enlighten us about it, but the president is planning on giving more money to policing in the United States through this American Rescue Plan, or whatever he's calling it. And that's supposed to build a bridge between economic recovery and invest in racial justice, is what he's saying they're supposed to do. But I mean, let's be real. You think the LAPD needs more money? Hamid?
No, thanks for raising that, Susan. Actually, just today, we put a letter out for some organizational sign-on. We've been actually, and it's interesting you'd say that, we have been working with a group of different folks from different cities, for example, from Memphis, Kansas City, Albuquerque, and let's see, Cleveland, where just towards the last months of the Trump administration, they launched these federal task forces like Operations Relentless Pursuit and other things as well. So, fast forward, Biden comes in, and those task forces were basically the same old bullshit that we have always heard about gun violence and gang violence, and all sugar-coated language about going after the Black community and poor folks, because all of these, when you look at these cities, there's a lot of development happening in Cleveland, so a lot of gentrification and removal of people. So Biden comes in, and for folks who may not know, Biden was the main architect of the infamous 1994 bill, which is known as the police bill, which when he was the senator and Bill Clinton was the president, that's what put $12 billion into policing. It hired 100,000 more cops, and it also created an office in the Department of Justice called the COPS Office, COPS, which is Community-Oriented Policing Section in DOJ. And community policing is this very nebulous and abstract and really messed up idea that is rooted in counterinsurgency. And we have actually found now Army field manuals, that one of the latest one that General Petraeus, who was the viceroy or something, or command, whatever the gig he had in Iraq. And so it is all about the meaning that how do occupying armies control local population? What is the whole process of pacification? What is the whole process of identifying some individuals in the community? What is the whole process of controlling populations? And actually tomorrow, I'm doing a podcast with Gerald Lenoir out of the Bay Area at 4:00 on this issue as well. So Biden announced that he's going to invest $300 million to hire more cops and give it to the field, officers, meaning law enforcement agencies. One example was that about 7 years ago, the LAPD got millions of dollars from community-oriented policing section, but the condition was that they would hire returning veterans. Right. And we know already, given the PTSD, given just a lot of these things are coming up. So to Susan's point, Susan, we've already launched a campaign against it. This is being discussed in Congress starting on July 12th. And we've already had almost over 200 organizations that have signed on a letter to send to the House of Representatives and the US Senate as well, asking them to reject the administration's request for $300 million that the COPS office is going to be getting, which then they will disperse. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. So we know that how right now, just today, there was in the news that 400 different incidents of gun violence around the country over the 4th of July weekend, and every day there's not a day going back, just that we can get around without hearing that high levels of gun violence, high levels of crime in the community. LAPD always comes back, but when you cut through a lot of bullshit, it's violent crime is down. So let's also be very clear about it, that in their own documentation, they are saying part 1 and part 2, violent crimes, which is homicide, just rapes and murders of those kind of crimes, that is down. Gun violence is up. And then and without looking at it, that how COVID, how high rates of unemployment, the failure to invest in communities is having its own impact as well. So anyways, a long story there, but thank you for raising that, Susan, but we're on it, very much on it.
Thank you for naming that.
Please put in the chat where we can see the podcast. I
was just going to tell you that.
Sure. Other thoughts?
What are some things that y'all would love to hear about in upcoming webinars? There you go. I'm actually usually a little bit more prepared. So usually I have like a panel and everything, trust. So we could do this. So like, just think about something I want to hear about in regards to gender and sexuality and the state. Real talk. Dang, it's cricket.
I'll speak up. It's awful quiet, but a couple of observations. Both Chella and Jessica, when they were talking about the internal organizations, it was that very specific and directed reflection that I saw for dealing with internal conflicts and progression within our own movement. And I have to compliment both of you on making those points there. And I think it's something that it's not only the actions things we do that is consistent. If we recognize, I thought, so.
Stephen, can you maybe turn off your camera, because you're kind of breaking up quite a bit and we didn't hear you. You froze up a little bit.
Yeah, is that any better?
Yes.
Yeah, again, their emphasis on intersectionality and on the reflection internal is my key point. I don't know if you were able to pick up on that commentary at all. It was a compliment to both of their commentaries. And I think it's something we need to be attentive to, making sure that we are in alignment when we go through this process. That's all.
Thank you. I think we have to be introspective, right? Like I said earlier about like my own journey. Like I used to be, I was never pro cop, so that's real. Just because my mom growing up Black and growing up in a very small racist town, we were stopped by police, so many times. So I've never liked police, but like, I'm gonna be honest, I used to think about calling them, or even thinking about I used to say some transphobic shit. I used to say some ableist shit, you know, like until people started teaching me these things and started like, we're all learning. And it's not about shaming anyone. It's not about shaming myself. Like I am proud of where I've come from when it comes to my gender, like my gender and sexual orientation expression. Um, I love the term queer for myself. That's another term for folks that don't know. Queer has been reclaimed, and it's been reclaimed to mean like against the system, not queer as in like, oh, I just like the same gender, blah blah blah. It's like no, we hate anything that's white supremacist. We hate anything that's nationalist. We hate anything that's imperialist, and we hate anything that's anti-black. And that's me. That's totally me. And I do put femmes first. I center femmes. Femmes as in woman, with the Y. So yeah, it's a growing journey for all of us. Anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, thinking about what you just said, Chell, about the difference between queer and maybe other other types of LGBTQ or LGBT politics maybe, and thinking of the Biden administration's performance of a certain intersectionality and having rainbow flags flying at the White House, et cetera, and all these things, while still funneling more money to police departments who may paint rainbow flags on their patrol cars as well. Just thinking about, how to fight against pink washing, I guess is the term for systems appropriating the symbolism of gay and trans and lesbian fights in order to reproduce the same system's power again, just in a new sort of vaguely intersectional way. Just if you've encountered that and other I think that would be an interesting conversation if that hasn't happened in a webinar before, about how to differentiate a true or a radical intersectionality versus the kinds of superficial ones that are now dominant even in the White House, but there's how to tell the two apart and hold on to the radical one, and with all the means of queer that you just laid out.
Good, yeah. To be honest, I think there's been a little of that in every webinar we've had, but I don't think we've ever had a specific focus on it. But I think folks have mentioned it. I'm always mentioning the co-optation, right? Co-optation of I think I mentioned this a few months ago around there's a few trans cops now. Do I feel safe with them? Hell to the motherfucking no. You could be pink for all I care. And I will still not trust you because you're working for the state. But yeah, I think a radical conversation around that will be great. Thank you, Matt. Your name's Matt, right? Okay, great. Reminder, I'm on the phone, so I'm actually not looking at it. Sometimes I'm looking off into space, looking at my cabinets and my artwork. Anyway, yeah. Anyone else? Co-optation would be a good one.
Yeah, that thing reminded me of the old saying about the black, white, and the blue cop. That it's about the color of the uniform. It's the institutional prerogative, and you could be black, you can be white, you could be trans, but it is all about the institutional prerogatives and And if the prerogative of the institution is to engage in violence and the intent is to cause harm, then just I don't know how that could ever shift.
So I have a little story, a little anecdote about that. Like in 2015, I want to say 15 or 16. There was a trans woman that was murdered on my block here, and the clergy of Skid Row decided to do like a memorial thing, and I went, like, because a friend of mine invited me, and I'm kind of upset that they invited me. But I go, and there was cops there. And then there was this one trans cop, like he was a white trans man. And I was like, why the fuck are cops here? And they're like, well, because we want to bridge the gap between our communities and this and that. I'm like, I don't feel safe as a black trans woman, and I live here. Y'all going somewhere else after this, but I live here. And then like the trans cop starts coming my way, and he's like, your name is Chella, isn't it? And I was like, okay, I got my shit and I left. I was like, I am not staying after that. Like, it was just funny because like this cop knew my fucking name. Surveillance. That was my intro. Surveillance. Hashtag. Anybody else? I know that one of the next we will be talking about in depth. Well, I'm gonna try to have a person that was on here before named Rumba. They work with trans youth in their area, and I think they work in Arkansas or Alabama, one of those two. So I know we're gonna do like a part 2 on that, and I know that we're gonna also expound more on like how can we support trans and queer youth right now, right? So those are definitely in the mix. But anything else? Anyone else? Ooh, I hear someone.
No, I was just going to ask if there's what's you planning for the main webinar in August, Chella, on the one on August 3rd, the first Tuesday?
I will honestly talk to Mariela because that's more of a Mariela one that I know. Yeah, but yeah, definitely coming up.
Cool. Well, anything else folks want to just talk about? Any other subject, any other issue?
Or questions, if y'all have questions even about the broader work that the coalition has been doing. We are involved in a few fights that Hamid can actually take lead and talk more about, just being honest. But yeah, if y'all have some questions. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, thank y'all for joining. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to hit us up. Y'all can always reach out to us, and we will do our best to answer the questions. Thank y'all for joining us. I apologize that I was not prepared. I think this conversation was good though, to like get y'all, get your feet a little wet about what the work that we do and talk about the things that we do. Next week is the War on Youth, right, Baba?
Yeah, next Tuesday is going to be the War on Youth, and I don't know what Nadia, Akhil, and Celine have planned, but right now the big piece is around what's going on in Palestine. So you know that the Palestinian youth movement has been very actively involved. And the current fight that is shaping up in LA is about the teachers union taking a position against Israel and the violence that is going on. And there's been a lot of pushback from the Zionist lobby in LA against UTLA, the United Teachers LA, the union. Which is interesting because the San Francisco Teachers Union took a pretty strong stand So this is where folks are, just organizing against the apartheid condition and various other things. So yeah, so just keep an eye out for the information. This is going to be uploaded. The video of this is going to be uploaded on the website probably by Saturday, and we'll have information as to what the focus will be next Tuesday then.
Okay. So I have an announcement. I have two announcements. For those that don't know, I curate this thing called Queerpocalypse, which does what I keep talking about that I want to do. I want to flip gender and race on their fucking head. Hallelujah. Anyway, we have a show coming up not this Friday, but next Friday. It's going to be on Zoom. Don't worry. There is a Delta variant out, so it's still on Zoom. I know folks are tired of Zoom, but it'll be fun. We're going to make fun. We're going to have some music. We're going to have I'm opening up with comedy, make y'all laugh about my experiences. We're going to have some singers, some like dancers. It's going to be lit. So if you want to join, hit a girl up. You can always follow it at Queerpocalypse 2020 on Instagram. Once again, that's Queerpocalypse 2020 on Instagram. And then we have a takeover we're going to do in Echo Park in 3 weeks. So look out for that. Those flyers are going to be coming out. You'll see it on there. Just follow that and you'll see, yeah. There you go. Those are my two, that's what I'm looking for.
Terrific. Thank you, Chela. And just on the other side, quick announcement is that the fight about enforcement in Skid Row and various other places across the city around homelessness continues. The city council is going to come back for another vote in the end of July when they come back from their recess. We saw that how they are now circling back to the same old, pretty draconian policies about removing unhoused people, from the land. So how they're already started in Venice Beach and other locations too. So that fight's brewing up. We'll keep you all posted and updated because it's going to be all hands on deck kind of fight because it's all about enforcement and more police and more criminalization. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank y'all for joining. Hope to see you next week. I usually go to the Warriors, and if not, I hope to see y'all next month. Hey.
Thank you, Chela. Thank you so much for all of that, all your work and everything. So, all right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Suzanne. It was good hearing your voice.
Yeah, it's good show. It's always good to be with you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Y'all have a good evening. Be safe. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.